Welcome to the Myself Wellness Podcast. I'm Charles Patti, the voice of Myself Wellness, along with my co-hosts Christina Thomas and Jamie Veneziale. 9 years ago, I began my journey to self-awareness and healing. Like many who have faced personal struggles, I felt lost and struggled to find lasting healing. It wasn't until I discovered alternative healing methods that I began to see a real change in my life. This show will help you unlock your true potential through healthy lifestyle practices and transformations. Join us as we explore personal stories, expert advice, and practical tips to help you step into your true potential and level up. Welcome to the Myself Wellness Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Myself Wellness Podcast. Today we have one of our near and dear friends, Woody Benson. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
What is going on? So we were talking a little bit off camera. I don't know where this conversation is going to go today, but I would love to start professionally for you. You had worked at some really, really cool places at really cool times. You worked at Apple in 1980. Please explain to me what that was like. What was it like being in that culture right before kind of the Apple revolution?
Yeah, Apple before Apple.
Well, not to go in the Wayback Machine, but all of these computers at the beginning were sold as hobbyist machines. No one called them business machines. The spreadsheet wasn't available. It was really for hobbyists. And hobby seekers would get like at-home build kits, like Heath kits was a big thing. The S100 computers were a big thing. There was no predominant operating system. There was no anything back then. So you basically had to get a computer and an I/O device and output, and you had to connect it all together to do really simplistic things. Corporations were using old DEC machines or IBM machines, a lot of them on punch cards. So the hobbyist kind of movement happened, and then it got into the hands of programmers, and they invented things like the spreadsheet and some elementary graphics things, and some printers became available. Then after a while, things like general ledger or accounting software became available, and each one of those things became monstrous industries.
Very cool.
What was your job there? What did you do?
And then connecting them all became mega industries, not just connecting computers on a floor, but computers in a building to people outside the building. Those were all monstrous things.
What was your job for Apple? Not take your question.
Oh, I was, Apple used manufacturers' reps to go to market. All of the executives at Apple at the time were from semiconductor companies, and they went to market through independent manufacturers' reps who work on basically strict commission. And I worked for a rep firm that represented Apple.
So that's just one of the amazing things that you've done. Like we could have tried to list off the scroll of accomplishments that you've had, but is there any way you could give a high level of what
I'd say absolutely number one accomplishment is being married to and in love with the same woman.
Yeah.
Well, we're married in 87. We met in 81. And she's, Beth is my best friend and wife and confidant and everything, today, just like it was yesterday. And I'd say, absolutely, no question about it, that's my number one accomplishment.
She puts up with your shit.
She puts up with my shit. She puts up with everything. She lets me be me, which is no small task. I can tell
No,
you
it's
that.
not. If you knew what it's not.
Very rarely get reeled in, although I probably should. Yeah, she lets me be me, and I just love her to death. And together we have two beautiful children, 31 and 32, and we now have a beautiful little granddaughter.
How did you guys meet?
Tinder. No.
Us or so we have a mutual friend, Dustin.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Who you've met too, who introduced us, and we started talking, and then Woody was interested in what we were up to, and so he came by the clinic and did a tour, and then we sat down and talked about maybe if it might be something that he would actually want to try and explore, and he said yeah. And so that was probably about
2 years ago?
3 years ago, I would say.
3
or 4 years ago. And it started off like that, and then we just built the most amazing friendship. I mean, he's honestly, one of the most accomplished, but one of the nicest guys I've ever met too. And then his wife Beth is fantastic.
But don't get him on a phone call with anybody; it'll tear him apart.
Yeah, that's when the bull goes in the China store. No, the truth is that like, we've met a lot of people over the last 5 years since we started the clinic, but the truth is that Woody and Beth are a couple of our favorite people, and we have ultimate respect for them. We go out to dinner with them. Nice, beautiful friendship that we've created. So.
Yep. I met Dustin through a mutual friend and looked at a number of things that he was involved with, met Charles and Christina, and then when I started understanding and exploring ketamine, and I was really drawn to the notion that ketamine creates new neural pathways that really kind of are a bridge to getting or exploring kind of your whole self, your deeper self, your spiritual self, maybe a pathway to the universe. I was really kind of intrigued by that. So, yeah. I've been several times, many times.
So I know that you got I guess you started showing interest in this psychedelic industry coming from a VC perspective. I know that I think you were looking to invest in different companies and things like that. Was that the beginning of your interest in psychedelics, or was there something leading up to it?
Yeah, I was a hobbyist for a while.
I love it.
I don't need to relive all the crazy college days, but yeah, those are big opportunities. Massive industries changing. I invested in cannabis a little bit, mostly on the software infrastructure side, not in the actual product or retail stuff, and. You see how cannabis unfolded, legalized in Canada, decriminalized in California and Oregon, maybe, some other places. And for sure, I think, other drug psychedelics would follow that pathway. So, that looks like, big opportunity. And God knows the world needs it. I saw this morning where 41% of people are living in a fog, full of anxiety. We need, better treatments for, all sorts of people.
I couldn't agree more. And then honestly, I say it all the time, but I'm crazy enough to think that psychedelics can actually completely change the world and heal a lot of the things that, our society is going through when it comes to mental health problems. So where do you see from that perspective right now? Because I know that, there was a lot of hope going into this right away where, there was a lot of VC money being put into different companies, and then things kind of didn't go as planned for a lot of those companies. Where do you see the market at now for that? What kind of hope for the industry, or what kind of negative things actually have you seen up to this point?
Well, it's probably like the tale of two cities. The upside, the best case is things like this, things like you're doing, more people are getting access to it, more people are getting help. Sadly, right now in a very polarized political environment and society environment, there's a lot of downside. The Matthew Perry, stuff, and abuse of ketamine, and there's a lot of confusion. So when you say ketamine, that's what Matthew Perry died of it. Of course, Matthew Perry, was getting it illegally from a doctor who shouldn't be selling to him for at-home administration, not under medical care, everything opposite of what you do at your clinic. And then, the trial, the FDA on MDMA, getting halted, really when you look into it for very bizarre, reasons, under the covers. But I think all of that moves to some kind of movement of things happening. So I don't think it's going to be super fast in this country. Clearly in other countries, whether Holland or Canada or Jamaica, and a lot of the retreats that are popular in Central America, South America, the islands, parts of Europe, Canada, are really helping a lot of people. So, maybe it wasn't quite at a tipping point yet, but, it will come. So I think it's kind of best of times, the worst of times.
One thing I really appreciate is somebody like, being a professional like yourself, actually talking about this and your own personal experience with like, coming to the clinic and things. I think that's really an angle and like a taboo that we need to break is, it's like, because a lot of people think that when people go in for, psychedelic ketamine therapy or something like that, that it's classically the suicidal soldier or the person that's at the end of their rope, and this is literally their last line of defense against a lifetime of mental health issues. And, that's one thing that I really want to is break that taboo and stigma about is that, there are professionals out there that, are very accomplished people that have had stressful lives and listen, like everybody's been through something traumatic in their life and everybody holds on to things and we stuff them and repress them and we kind of need to work through those things. But, I think that it's people like you that are actually going to come out here and be able to reach a demographic of the masses that really needs to be tapped into, that I think is not taken care of the way that it needs to up to this point.
Well, I think ketamine clinics in Silicon Valley and New York are, getting a lot of, VC attention, as coaches. But I'll tell you what, the, first and foremost, the clinic is a medical clinic, and you meet with a doctor, you're administered by a nurse, you're supervised, the whole time. Your vitals are taken. This is like non-recreational. It's it's therapeutic. It's interesting kind of what's happened, as a venture capitalist and looking at and doing, lots of deals, and, these deals are all like mini marriages. They last longer than some marriages. It used to be 5 years, now it's like 10 years plus. And as an ex-operating, executive, I used to do, a lot of time with the companies on what do you do and, how to do it, and trying to like, coach them over the head. Well, do this or do that. And what this, the benefit of ketamine, perhaps, or deeper awakening has been, it's more important now to look at who you're doing business with, because I think, and how do they think about things? Because one thing the experience has taught me, or at least my experience, is, you see kind of a bigger universe out there. Some could call it a disassociative, benefit, but you kind of see a bigger universe and you realize we're kind of all in this like little planet together. Everything's a bunch of cells. The table's a bunch of cells. The rocks are a bunch of cells. Everything's a bunch of cells. And you kind of realize that. And two things for me, at least, is, post this experience or experiences, I have in my daily reminder, two things. One is be a BP, be a better person. And, post, when you kind of come out of this, it's kind of, really weird, but your body kind of wakes up and I'm like, oh my God, I never felt this, or, you kind of like more appreciative of so many things. And the other is see people through their eyes, which is a really hard thing to do because, big ego-driven, successful people want to tell. You should do this, you should do that, blah, blah, blah. And telling someone to do something isn't going to get an entrepreneur to do that at all. But seeing, seeing how they think through their eyes, being, empathetic and really putting yourself through their shoes. Like, this is not through your prism at all. You have to like divorce yourself of your prism, put yourself in their prism. And then you get like, just from that minute when you zone in, you get a sneak peek of what they're going through. And then it's a relationship. I don't want to call it a relationship of humanity, but kind of a relationship of humanity, because it's divorced from financial stuff or operating stuff or metrics or KPIs or, all this kind of, stuff we look at and how we analyze businesses. This is why, like, VC will never be like an AI business. This is why AI will never be able to do some of these things. Really look at someone and what they're going through their eyes. Oh my God, there's Charles. He showed up today. Well, how did Charlie go after school today? How's Charlie doing in kindergarten? How's Christina feeling? Like, how's your mom doing? How's everything, in your life? Like, what are you bringing? And then how do you see what we're talking about? Me yelling at you or slamming this at you or putting up a million facts isn't going to motivate you to do anything. It's going to dull you into some kind of repression, but to build these businesses, which really are organic, these businesses are a labor of love. Every great business I've been a part of has been someone's vision, some labor of love that everyone has to buy into, and you work to create it. And having that empathy, which is a big benefit of the psychedelic experience, is, at least for me, a big thing.
I love that you just talked about this, because that's what I've seen from my personal use with psychedelics is that, like, listen, I've always been an empathetic person, but it really does put you in that position where you want to come from a heart-centered place and you do care about what other people are going through. And I think that when you're building like any good company, like that's one of the real important factors, especially when you're coming from in an industry that is from a heart-centered place. I mean, it might not be like that for all companies, but when you're in the psychedelics industry specifically, it's like you need to be, because your company has like an energy, because everything is energy, right? If you're in a hostile or not heart-centered workplace, then the rest of your team isn't going to be able to be there to support and help other people on their healing journey properly, because they're not going to feel right inside. And like, I think for me personally, what I've noticed is that like, I definitely in my past been more bullish with my delivery when it came to things. So like if I was communicating something to somebody and I was very passionate about it, my delivery might be a little bit off, and I'd be like, and come with that energy. We're like, I need to tell you this, and I'm gonna and it was more disruptive to somebody's peace and happiness maybe than the way that I would come at that situation now. And so like, I actually was having this conversation with Christina the other day where I think that the psychedelic industry is different than a lot of these other industries, and like psychedelic companies are different than other companies out there, is because the one thing that you really need to build a good psychedelic company is people that are coming from a heart-centered place, people that are very mission-driven, that they're doing this because it's their purpose to be of service and help people, and that you can look at numbers and KPIs and all of these things in other industries and specifically focus on that more. But that's not what's necessarily going to make a company like ours successful. What's going to make a company like ours successful is coming from the heart-centered place and helping people first. Because a lot of these businesses, the real you're going to get new leads and new people coming in the door because of word of mouth. And if your team isn't completely like centered and from a heart-centered place, then they're not going to transmute that onto the people that you're treating, and nobody's going to get the word of mouth referral business through this kind of thing. So it's a very different industry in that place. And that's what my big suggestion for people out there that are in this business or in this industry is that, like, just focus on helping the next person. And if you do that and you come from that heart-centered place, I think that's a recipe for
you. You got to build advocates, one patient at a time, one customer. I've always been complimented on my very soft-handed approach, because I've never told anyone, what to do. I've never been accused of ramming it down someone's, throat and all that. But I will say, I've been lucky enough to be a part of several super fast-growing, highly successful companies. And one thing you said brings up this memory. I used to, this one networking company I was the number 2 guy at. When people would come in the lobby, I'd go pick them up. And I'm like, you feel that? And they're like, what? What, Woody? What am I feeling? I'm like, energy. Do you feel that? Mm-hmm. That's kinetic energy. That kinetic energy is getting shared all across this place. But do you feel it? And they'd be like, yeah, I feel it. And that's how great companies are built. They're built on the, some, superior, camaraderie, collaboration, cell delivery, whatever you want to call it. But, that energy, all the stuff that, we don't think about during the day, all the rest of the stuff our brain does, that's powerful. We only tap into a very small amount.
Yeah, no, I think that's why, psychedelics are very useful too, is because we're tapping into that more. And we do realize that everything's about energy. I'd love to hear your perspective of when you actually came to the clinic and like what you experienced. And
Did you feel that energy there?
Did you feel
No, but when I was tied down on the thing, I was like, "Is this really what's supposed to happen?" It's a small, clinic and an office building with like a really nice vibe and like these very communal rooms, and I was greeted warmly and taken into this like really comfortable room with a easy chair and a blanket and like vibey stuff and rugs and all this stuff, like a yoga place kind of, and the nurse comes in and she's wearing scrubs and all that and is talking to you and in the middle of talking to you, she's taking your blood pressure and all this stuff. And have you thought about your intentions for today? Because it's really important to have intentions into this. What are you looking forward to? Like, is there someone you want to meet, someone you talk to, a place you want to go? Kind of like setting your intentions. Collaborate on the music. There's a lot of choices of what to listen to. Charles and Christina say nothing sometimes is better. So sometimes I listen to nothing. Sometimes I listen to whatever playlists are available.
Yeah, what was that one playlist you wanted to listen to that I couldn't find? Nobody could find it. He was so mad. He was so mad. He was coming at me.
I have a new one.
He was yelling at me.
I wasn't yelling at you.
Yes, you were.
I was sharing communal energy. But when I come out of it, I always like to listen to either Steely Dan or Marshall Tucker.
It was Marshall Tucker.
I was just going to
the
say.
way we were, Marshall Tucker, like, just the greatest.
I was just going to say, after he did come out of his treatment, so it was like a concert going on in there. It was just, he's in there and he's jamming. And
with his snacks.
Yeah, with his snacks.
Then, when you come out of it, snacks and juice and, chill out there, chill out in the other room. But it's really a very comfortable, wonderful experience. And my wife would pick me up with the dog and the dog would come in and, and it's like, oh, I love you so much. I mean, I'm loving everybody so much. It's a really positive vibe, a positive experience. I'm sure there, people can be anxious or afraid. There's really nothing to be afraid of. There's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. It's very comforting, very soothing. And people who think, I may get sick during all this, you get this like, anti-nausea, medicine first. You can get a magnesium shot, which is helpful for your body and also enhances, the experience. And then there's the experience.
That's what I wanted to get into.
So you get a shot from a doctor who, like, cleans you out, from the nurse who, cleans out, does the whole thing, whatever. And then in like a minute, you get this incredible sense of warmth, just like your body just feels like warm. And then you're wearing this eye mask and you got headphones, listening, and that mask, you're kind of seeing, whatever you're seeing, but you can move from, it's like kind of virtual reality in a way. You can move, from place to place by looking up. I want to go here, I'm going to look to the right, and then I can be in a totally different place. Or if I think of this, I'll go there. If I want to like be, I don't know, whatever, be in the ocean, I can think about that. If I want to be in a band playing a guitar, if I think that happens. And you kind of go, into like all these different things. Now, sometimes, some people, meet their relatives in heaven or meet Christ or Gandhi or whatever. I've never met Christ or Gandhi but that doesn't mitigate the effect on me. But I've, had these kind of wonderful, journeys or trips and they've been really awesome and, zoomed around. And sometimes, I'm in between these like, big rocks, kind of the desert, and everyone thinks like these rocks are innate, like they don't move, but, you can kind of see or feel that they have cells in them and they're moving. And like one day, like they could just, it's like kind of a crazy thing. And then, when your journey's over, you're kind of coming down. And I actually think this is the best part. for me anyway, you're coming down. I don't want to say like it feels like the end of a Disney trip. Please, please make sure and take your personal, things with you, but you're kind of coming down and you're like, I don't know, maybe floating a little bit above everything. And I always see like the ocean and the sunset and, a beach. And I kind of have this like vibe, at the end. And it's just like so like beautiful and calming. I want that to like, last forever. And then it's like really hard to believe like that whole thing's been an hour and a half, because it feels like you've been away. And like if you have your thing at 2 and like you wake up and you turn your phone on and you're like, what? It's 4? You gotta be kidding me. And then that's when it's like you get this massive warmth, and then you're kind of in this space, and then you're feeling it, seeing, and kind of zooming around, and then you're coming, down, from a high place, kind of like up in the sky, like landing. That's why it feels like a Disney ride, I guess. And then it's like soothing, calming, and then you feel, for me, I guess reset is the word. Like if you're feeling, like who doesn't feel anxious? Like everyone feels anxious about what they do. You gotta, everyone's got a to-do list, right? It's lunacy. All of that seems kind of like secondary, and what seems primary is kind of your love and compassion and empathy for people. And what seems primary is a sense of calmness. And maybe that's a reset, maybe seeing things in a different way. Chemically, you are creating new neural pathways, which is a huge benefit, because some of my old neural pathways, need an upgrade. I'm sure that's, true for everyone. So like, what do you, that's a great thing to have new connections. Only a small part of your brain is connected anyway. Now you're connected to yourself, and you somehow feel connected to a broader thing. I don't want to say the universe, but maybe kind of the universe. You're connected and feel more communal and part, and I think you come out being nicer to people. I think you're more empathetic, a little bit more polite. You're not gonna, yell and scream at people. Not that I'm a yelling and screamer, but maybe sometimes.
You're just loud.
I'm just loud. But yeah, that's the whole thing. And then you have your little. If Charles and Christina are in a good mood, you get a little Oreos and popcorn or whatever. Oreos are my favorite, and
I love
I have big boxes of Oreos right now, like the long
chocolate or Oreo or vanilla.
chocolate.
Okay, chocolate.
I also have Nutter Butter. Remember you like
I
those
love
too?
Nutter Butter.
Mhm.
I love how you kept talking about the science behind it. You've done your research. You know what this is actually doing for people. These compounds, it's not just about a trip or a journey. I mean, and that is where a lot of the therapeutic value of the medicine lies. But like, there's so much science behind how this is so beneficial for people. And I think that there's just a lack of knowledge out there about this. And that's one of the reasons why we're having such a hard time pivoting people from the old paradigm into this new paradigm, is that these are drugs and these are psychedelics, and this is what people take to, get high or go, whatever they're doing with it in a non-therapeutic manner, where it's like, no, like this is literally going in and changing your brain.
Ketamine's been around for 20 years and
50.
obviously 50 years, obviously FDA approved and all this. And so it's a very safe drug in the right environment. Of course, it's not safe when it's abused. So I don't know how the inhaling ketamine became the K drug or whatever it is, and how people can buy it at clubs. It's kind of like, well, ecstasy and Molly are kind of MDMA, watered down, really, not pure MDMA, but, kind of, a synthetic, club thing. Ketamine had the same thing, and I guess that bloomed into where, poor guys like Matthew Perry found a doctor, or a series of doctors who could be, comp $50,000, to get them vials. This is exactly like Michael Jackson propofol. That is not cool. That is, not okay. Ketamine, 50-year-old FDA, drug with clearly defined benefits and clearly defined safety parts. So even with my friends, I talked to them about this. After the Matthew Perry thing, I got people calling me, hey, are you okay? Are you doing ketamine? Yes, I do ketamine in a clinic. with a doctor, supervised. No, I would never do it, at home. I wouldn't even know how to get it or do it at home. I would never do it at a club. I don't even understand how ketamine could be a club drug per se, because it's, MDMA or Molly or ecstasy is like, overloads in serotonin, and those are love drugs. Ketamine is not really a love drug, per se, maybe emotionally afterwards, but it's not like, love in the back of a club drug.
Well, that's where like this is where all of the horror stories come from, is like, so like you've had that experience at the clinic where you go into this dreamlike state and you're basically like in a completely different place. Can you imagine like being in a nightclub, right, and doing a dose of ketamine like that out in public, where you basically get into this disassociated anesthetic state, and you're like in the corner of a nightclub and you don't know if you're safe? It's like that could literally be traumatic.
I don't get it, because that's what ketamine is. It's disassociative, meaning your body is in one place and your spirit and your mind are somewhere else. That's why you're zooming around the galaxy or wherever you want to go, be in the ocean, whatever you're zooming around. That's why you can zoom around, because you're disassociated. And that's the benefit, that's the beauty, that's the kind of fun of it, although the post, session therapeutic results, are really the real benefit, but it's not unpleasant. It's a lot of fun. I couldn't imagine, I've never really been to a club, don't go to bed at 9, but, being at a club at 1 o'clock, and this ain't no love drug. I mean, you'd be sitting there drooling on yourself. So I don't really get it.
I couldn't agree more.
I think it's interesting going back to your experience that you said that you had with ketamine and the stigma around it specifically. For me, before I met Charles and Christina, I didn't know anything. And the thing that I think is tough is when you go on Google and you search it up, you go on YouTube, you search it up, anything that has a headline in it with ketamine associated to it is usually negative most of the time.
Yeah, I never went to YouTube, for it. I went more into the medical research, more into, some podcasts. Most of them come out of Canada, really, but, some podcasts with doctors or therapists. I looked at more of the scientific, stuff. I didn't think, and I haven't even thought of like going on YouTube to get some, rogue user's perspective. But I can imagine that would be, pretty freaking. Nor can I ever think of like going on YouTube and creating, and I, Charles and Christina and friends, I respect what they do. Otherwise, I wouldn't think of, let me go on YouTube and talk about, ketamine.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because you don't have if you're not thinking about how you thought about it and going the extra mile to actually find the information, what it was for me and what it was for many people, I'd imagine, is you have a trust in YouTube that that YouTube would not lead me astray. And that's what allowed me to take that step. But I think it's interesting that that's the way that you have to get people there, versus when I actually did it and I got the benefits, I got out of most of those treatments screaming it from the rooftops about how people need it and how it isn't the stigma around it. When people found out that I did it, they asked me like, are you okay? Like, oh, are you suicidal? Oh, are you like, they thought something was legitimately wrong.
A lot of the, I don't want to say promotion, but kind of the promotion stuff, even on, some of the, my self-wellness stuff is, PTSD, veterans and suicide, and that's all true. And those people need help. And, and if it's good for them, it's good for us. Mm-hmm. So there's this one university, what's the university in the UK that publishes like all this?
What, Imperial? Or are you talking about Awaken Sciences did the clinical studies for alcohol use?
But Imperial College in London, I read a lot of that because I looked at this from an investor's perspective first. So I read, a lot of the stuff first, but it's true. There are people with, chronic conditions, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, trauma. And like Charles said, we all have some trauma somewhere. Like no one's in this life without some kind of trauma. And, like Charles was saying the other day, a lot of, successful, he said men, but probably, people, hide, all potential weakness deep inside and just show that, alpha dominance, stuff, and all that other stuff kind of sits and, just, grows in there and becomes kind of its own thing. And, medicines like this, help deal with that, help let it out. And the way that it deals with it is when you let a thought out into the ether, you're harboring some kind of thought or experience, and you're holding it in, and it seems so big and personal to you. But when you let it out in the ether, it dissipates and it becomes smaller, and you're able to overcome something, and you're able to overlook something, and able to get past something. And then you have now evolved, and you're now kind of, more connected, and that's really the benefit.
That's what Jamie said when he got out of one of his treatments. He's like, I just realized that all of like my blocks, all of these like these cinder blocks that were my blocks in my life are really made of styrofoam. Like they just it's all this stuff that I've been so worried about that it's really not as serious as I thought it was.
I was looking at life through the plane that most people see it in, especially myself, having not experienced any psychedelic trips. You only see life in this one plane, and you see it in like pretty much what we see right now, what we're walking in, what we're working in right now. And so when you see that, and like you're saying, once you get the perspective shift of ketamine or any of the psychedelic compounds that we talk about on the show, you all of a sudden realize that, number one, we're not alone in this pursuit. Like we sometimes can get so fixated on how important we are, or how important what we're doing is, or how like we overinvest our mind and energy into the present of what we think people perceive us as. And that experience and all the experience I had at myself were those zoom out, look at this from 30,000 foot view, and then all of a sudden those things that used to trip you up, or those things that you used to fixate on for months and months and months, are kind of just not necessarily as important to you as
little things are now little things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And you now have a new big thing. You see a bigger thing, and we're all just kind of, part of a bigger thing. We're so self-centered and self-focused and self-absorbed and self-anxious and self-stressed and self-trauma that, we have a very hard time saying, a bigger thing, especially in today's uber politicized, environment. Like, it's just, hopefully, when the elections are over, everyone can calm down. But, we're all like just so super, hung up on, every kind of, little thing. And to survive and to be healthy and to be happy and to be productive, we've got to have a bigger and broader perspective.
It's the compartmentalization of the mind. It's these moments of high stress, which I still go through them now, even after my treatments, but you're able to have a little bit of like a second moment where I'm angry or something happened, I'm stressed, and then I'm able to actually look at it and go, does this actually matter? And then once you have that kind of second question, you're able to either disassociate from it and let it just be. The best example of it is like I used to be the person in the car of the emotion. So if it was anger, I was in the car of anger. Now I'm the passenger sitting at the bus stop watching the car go by. And so it's like a complete different relationship with the emotion.
The anger was driving the bus and you were just in it. No, you're driving the bus.
100%. 100%.
Awesome. Good for you.
It's funny when we're talking about the with all of the stress within the country right now because of politics and stuff. We were at Christina's family's house last night, and the thing is I literally am just so hyper focused on helping people heal. That's literally all I care about. I mean, not care about, but it's all I focus my energy on. It's what I give my attention to. And one thing I love about this industry is that it doesn't matter what political party you affiliate with. I told everybody last night, I'm like, listen, if Donald Trump needed ketamine treatments, we'd treat Donald Trump. And I said, and if Kamala Harris needed ketamine treatments, we'd treat Kamala too. And I think that that's one of the most important part, or a very important part, is that when it comes to this, is that everybody needs to heal, no matter what. And I think that that's where a lot of the heads are getting, they're butting against each other right now, is because there's still a lot of healing that has to be done.
And that Taylor Swift video, and
Oh, I saw the comments on that.
Yeah.
I know.
People were pissed.
People are coming out of the woodwork. They never comment on anything, but now they're all commenting.
I was like, I forgot we were friends on Facebook, and it's basically like, we have access to Taylor Swift tickets through another organization that they're
Auctioning them
they're
off.
auctioning them off or whatever, and we get to raise money to help save people's lives, and it's like, it doesn't matter who somebody backs politically. Like she's
Teenage girls love her.
She's a musician, which we have tickets to a concert from, and it has nothing to do with politics. And people are basically, spitting hate and spewing hate in our direction for wanting to raise money to help save people's lives. And so it's like, I don't know. I think that's where we really need to take.
But none of those people are donating. They don't want to save lives. They just want to talk shit, and that's what people's purpose is right now.
No, for sure. But I said, but that's what it is, though. I really think that, I think that this industry can actually bring a lot of people together and get people to hyper focus on what's really important in life.
Well, going back to what you were talking about with your experience, it's interesting because when we wake up and some people just go and they go immediately to their phone, they become very quickly accustomed to the world around them, and they become hyper fixated on the world around them. And what I've learned from the experience that you're talking about when you're floating above the chair before you get in, and you almost have this FOMO of I don't really want to leave. I don't really want to leave this feeling. I want to hold on to this. I've tried to understand what that is, and I think that is mindfulness, because you have this new perspective on how you're viewing your reality. And most people are so hyper fixated on stuff they can't control, and that's what leads to stress, anxiety, just things that you can't necessarily
you really feel like, I don't need my phone. I don't really care.
Yeah, just I'll push the button and Christina will come do it for me.
Yeah.
That's his perspective.
No, it's usually because I can't find something. But you really have that feeling, right? I bet the world's still spinning. I don't have to be connected into this. And look, I am. I get on first thing in the morning, I'm back, in it. But you're right. You're in that kind of everything's okay.
Everything's okay. That is something I've been grateful to carry on with me, is that fact that everything's okay. And just at least holding on to that. Again, we'll see in a few months if that still holds to be true. But I think that's what Dr. Ferber also talked about. It's it's not a silver bullet necessarily. There's a lot of work that needs to be done outside of the treatments and being able to kind of...
The catalyst.
Yeah, it's the catalyst for sure. I think what I hope it does for people is it gives you this perspective of what life could be, what you could feel on a day-to-day. It's not going to be all the time, but at least having a better observation of what you're feeling and why you're feeling, because most people are going through their life and they have no idea why they're mad. They have no idea why they're sad. They just live in these states of again, the emotion is driving the bus and they're just passengers.
Well, and it's a choice too. So ketamine opens that window to show you what it could be. And if you want to stay in that choice, or if you want to make a choice to be angry, do you want to make a choice to be sad every day? It allows you to open the window and see on the other side.
You have the control.
I think what Ferber, although he's never said this, I think what he kind of espouses is if you follow kind of, his stuff and if you, meditate and be more spiritual and mindful and do all that and, find a higher purpose, then ketamine is going to help that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, if, you can be aware of how to meditate and all that. And ketamine's like a kerosene on there where you get a glimpse of, fire that does, higher path is available there and you get it for a short while, but it would be probably more helpful and productive if you accompany that with a higher spiritual sense of meditation and mindfulness and all that. And not good at that, and I'd like to be better at that. And I can't say I've invested a lot of time in there, although I'm kind of sort of trying in my own funny way. and psychedelics are kind of a burst of flame towards that mission. So I think that's what he's going for. Look, there are many cultures out there that are super aware spiritually, and our culture here in the United States ain't one of them.
No. But how can you be when you're constantly inundated with things to care about that aren't yourself? It's like, even I'm falling trapped to it now that the NFL season is back. Like I love NFL football. Like but I've been programmed since I was a kid because I played it, watched it every Sunday, and I had the moment the other day, not related to NFL, but I watched the UFC, and I was so invested into what was going to happen with this fight that night. Stayed up until 2:00 in the morning, watched the fight. The fight sucked. I woke up the next day. I was kind of pissed. I was like, I don't feel good today. Now, why? Because I obsessed over something that I had no control over. I was super invested in it. And this is not a knock on people that like to be entertained by these things, but how can you have a culture that is elevated when most people wake up and they literally start their day obsessed with everything that isn't them, or everything that isn't going to...
Like how Philadelphia didn't cover the spread the other night.
I mean, come on now. I woke up, all of a sudden we're up 7, and then I go to bed. Yeah, exactly. Losing fourth quarter leads. But that is legitimately something that I've thought about a lot since then, is why... I think it's okay to have a relationship with those things. Like, I'm not going to be the person that's like, don't watch NFL football. Like, if that's your thing, that's your thing. It's definitely mine. But that can't take precedent over your piece. Like that, there's no world where your piece is ranked below something like the NFL or gossip or whatever it ends up being. But most people live that life of, and people will say, right? People will say, that's not true. That's not, but where's your time, energy, and money going? That's probably what is on your pedestal in a sense.
Well, like, this guy right here, he's like, hey, did you watch this game? And he says it to him. I'm like, no, I didn't watch it. And then like,
you missed you missed the Masters, you missed the World Series, you missed Stanley Cup, you missed the Celtics winning, the World Championship.
Sports.
I did, but the thing is that like I'm just locked in, man. Mm-hmm. I'm locked in. I can't be distracted by anything right now. Hey, boo.
He saw it on Facebook.
Yeah. Locked into world healing, And I don't know though. Like I get it. Like listen, like there's a lot of emotions that are dragged up by a lot of this stuff. And then people don't like people because they're from certain places and things like that, or like or like, oh, you like this fighter and I like this fighter, so I don't like you because you like this fighter. It's kind of, and it's the same thing with politics at the end of the day too. And I'm not trying to get into politics.
We haven't learned to accept, and I do. I have a lot of my friends who are politically different than me, and I don't really judge them for it. They're free to have their views. I'm free to have my views. The thing that I have a hard time with is when it becomes, personal. When like it'd be fine. Like explain your candidate's views without telling me how bad, my candidate is, or all the terrible things, my candidate's going to do. That, I can feel it on myself. Just, what are your views? That just, it would be like so helpful in all this conversation if you just explain your view, and your view hopefully is more than the other person who's so bad.
So that's it right there. I love that. Anybody is entitled to anything that they want to believe or who they support, whether it comes to politics or sports or anything and stuff like that. But like, I'm a big believer in the laws of attraction. And right. So what I put out, I attract towards me. And the thing is that if I'm sitting here and I'm just constantly bashing people that I don't like that's not putting positive energy out into the universe. So like if you do support somebody or you have your own personal beliefs or whatever, like stand true in that without projecting negativity on other people.
And so that's going back to the experience that I had with the UFC this weekend. I love the UFC, but I was so fixated on this fight coming up. So fixated on.
Was this the one in like the dome?
Yeah,
that looked really cool,
was
man.
Sick.
I saw it.
It was super cool, but I was so fixated on it, excited for it. I stayed up for it. Now I'm a little pissed off because it sucked. And I was like, why did I just stay up and watch this? I wake up the next day, I don't feel 100% because I stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning. Makes sense. But then because of something that I have no control over, it's not conflict in my life. It's not anything in I wake up and now all of a sudden I'm pissed off. And then like you're saying, what am I going to attract? I'm just going to attract more things to piss me off that day. And so that's the spiral that most people find themselves.
Not for nothing. I don't watch the UFC, but I think they'd do better if they didn't have numbers like this is UFC 1258.
Yeah.
You know, if they ended, or like this is the UFC Golden Retrievers versus like, Burmese Mountain Dogs. Like, okay, I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah.
The Golden's gonna get mugged here. Like that's not for nothing, but
big ups to Dana White though, because he talked about, like, not that I follow this stuff really, but like I heard him talking about wanting to hold an event in that sphere or whatever, and like what from he manifested it, and what I actually, from like the pictures and everything that I saw about it, it looked like one of the coolest venues that I've ever seen before.
It definitely was, but that point right there is interesting, right? So how many people get caught up in other people's manifestations, and they hear, like, people that have big visions, they communicate it exceptionally well. Elon, Dana, you have these people that are really good with communicating their vision, and so many people can get caught up in somebody else's manifestation of reality, but then when it comes to themselves, to where Dana said, hey, I'm going to make the best UFC fight of all time at the Sphere, everybody's invested in it, everybody's involved, but when that singular person that watched the Sphere doesn't actually believe that they can do anything close to that, or they can't be happy, or they'll tell themselves, I can't be happy because X, Y, and Z. That's where it's just confusing for people. You see somebody that manifestation works so well for them, but then they'll discredit it for themselves.
I have a question that I want to ask you. Coming from a successful entrepreneur like yourself, what do you think is the recipe for being a good leader?
Vision, compassion, sharing your vision, sharing your compassion, motivating, get everyone to be the best they can possibly be. And no one is ever going to be the best because you tell them to be the best. You can't beat someone into success, but everyone wants to be a part of success. Everyone wants to be a part of something bigger. People, inherently want to come together. And so organizations where people are political and are at each other, they're never going to work. But, when there is something that everyone if you can create that environment, and I don't know if there's a recipe for that. Look, I'm a sales marketing guy, but when I ran companies, I sat in engineering. And they're like, why do you sit in engineering? We're trying, this is like doing homework. All you're doing is bothering us. I'm like, I know, but I just love what you do. And I want to know what you're thinking when you do that. And then we're going to market the hell out of that, because I'm amazed by that. I'm not amazed by sales and marketing. I get that. All those engineers are now, oh my God, this guy cares what we do. This guy, we're going to excel at our craft. So I think getting everyone together, and the greatest things are human made. And the greatest things in our life civilization are human made. Great Wall of China, great companies like Microsoft or Apple, man on the moon. Great things are human made. We're capable of doing so many great things. So inspiring people to be great, think about, being great. A leader who talks to them about being great is so much different in the world, I think we're in now, which is, and I only really know about, high tech, per se, there's not even customer interactions anymore. Right, you have to talk to a bot or an agent. You don't even talk to salespeople. You order this online, then and deal with it. Like, we're missing, the personality of everything, and it's the personification of a brand or a company or a culture that makes it powerful. How do you define the personality of a company you don't really interact with? By their UI, by their UIX, by the UX, that's how you're going to decide it. It's such a interesting challenge, in today's world, especially now AI is going to be a big thing. But I think the greatest leader is, personifying the company, creating a culture, being compassionate, having super, super high goals. I am not a fan of participation awards. I'm not a fan of everyone gets to go. I'm a big fan of great people do great things, and great people do great things should get great results and great, remuneration, for doing that. I'm a big fan of great people do great things. And you want a company that's going to do that. You don't want everyone can be the same. These are super high test, high octane, organisms, really, right? It's survival of the fittest. Not everyone's going to live in, companies and culture, right? You're going to be the one, you got to be the Bernese mountain dog that's going to eat the golden retriever or whatever. You got to go out there and you got to want to win. You got to want to, do it for the right reasons. And I think that's what a great leader does. And I think the great leader isn't a process person. There are a lot of, you can hire, like I always say, look, I don't have a Harvard MBA, but every time I wish I had one, I hire one. I'm not that smart. They wouldn't take me. I did teach MBAs, but I'm not that smart. I'll have, a great leader, kind of sits, above all that. Success isn't by process. Success is really passion.
That was money.
I mean, I'm interested to find out, when you look at everything that you know about business, everything that you know about psychedelics, and honestly, what you just said there about leadership ties it all together. Where do you see the world of psychedelics going in a business sense with this? I feel I might just have bias to the fact that I think that people are becoming more conscious. Maybe it's going the other way, but I'd be interested to get your take on that.
I'd say it's percolating. I wouldn't say the coffee's made, but it's percolating. And, I think cannabis, hasn't really worked out so well. I don't think there's any really great cannabis companies. I think people forgot, it's a weed, and we're going to use, the pound as, a unit of measurement. And then when the price per pound goes down, everyone gets wiped out. I think kind of the regulations, have been screwed. I don't think there's any, name me a great cannabis company. It's really, hard to. Even the great ones that haven't been that great. No great retail success. There's not a CVS of, cannabis, a computer land of cannabis. This stuff hasn't really happened yet. It's percolating. And I think psychedelics is percolating. And my advice would be for the constituents in the industry, the My Self Wellness, to collaborate and be, friendly to other clinics, in this, and they get together and they share information and they share, stories and all that. I think the golden goose is going to be cracked overnight. This is going to be like the FDA comes down, oh my God, this is legal. And oh my God, now this is happening. That's not going to happen. That's not how big things happen. They percolate, they take time. And I think this is where this is. And I think the advocates are the users and the patients who hopefully will benefit. And then they tell two people, and then they tell two people, and it will happen. And I'm not so sure that an influx of capital changes anything. I think a lot of times it makes it worse. There's a big influx of capital, into cannabis. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. That's, when a venture capitalist, private equity company gives a company capital, they want them to spend it. So now you're spending that at a point in time, and shooting the wad, so to speak, and then that time is over and the capital is gone because, that was a point in time. I don't know if we're really I think we're just percolating and it's all good. I don't think there's a magic elixir. I don't think anything's going to happen overnight. It's possible other countries and cultures, who have a longer, less politicized view than we do will be more effective, with this whole thing. But just the fact that we're having a discussion, I would put on the asset column as a plus, and we move forward.
The one when it goes to the cannabis conversation, I look at the entire industry and there's only one company that really sticks out to me, and it's Cookies. And the reason that Cookies sticks out is because Berner, and he's created such a culture with that company. And so the thing is that's what he did. He put his face behind it. He made culture around it. He got into the hip hop scene. He's got a lot of the artists that support his company. I mean, like everybody's wearing cookie shirts and stuff like that.
You've never even heard of cookies.
So
It's marketing.
but
I
it's
need more hip hop in my life.
it's good. It's culture. You've got the guy who had the passion behind it and put his face behind everything, and then he did the right things with the marketing and getting in with the
But
right.
there's not a lot of big brands, and cannabis. I remember when some private equity company bought the Bob Marley brand for like $20 million. It isn't branded. When you go into a dispensary, it's generally their brands, because of the way regulation works, they got to buy from there.
So that's what Burner Cookies is, a dispensary brand. It's not actually a cannabis company. But with what you were just saying too, like I'm really happy that like the way that the universe kind of laid it out for us, and because like we probably would have taken money if it was from the right people. I'm glad that like the way that my self-wellness has been up to this point is we've kind of got to build everything and get this structure laid out over the last 5 years where we didn't take a whole bunch of VC money or anything and stuff like that.
Imagine coming in every morning, Charles, Christina, how many new leads did you get this week? How many of those converted? How many sessions did I do? How many repeat customers? How many referrals came from that? What's your website doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. And now you're on, some companies, aren't ready to, you got to nail it before you scale it. And, one of the big problems with venture capitalists, the money comes in before it's nailed, and then they try to scale and it kind of blows up. It's like a Rubik's Cube. You got to put it all together. When the time's right, then you can scale it. But I think, you're in the stage of, you're maniacally focused on helping people, one at a time. That doesn't necessarily scale overnight to tens of thousands of people, all the time. And it's okay. This is how great things happen. Remember, Apple Computer in 1980 was sold to hobbyists, not a spread, business people didn't buy it. Now,
Well, this is the conversation we had with Dustin, because Dustin was on the show, and he's just like, it's not always the overnight stuff that's the big thing, or it sticks, or that's what's going to make people successful. It's going out there and getting the base hits every day and making the little wins consistently over and over again, which are going to ensure the long-term success of something.
Totally agree.
What an amazing episode. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming on, Woody.
my pleasure.
One last thing.
Yeah.
If you had a message for the world, what would it be?
Be nice to each other.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Good.
And if nobody told you they loved you today,
We do.